Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Brokerpreneur podcast. I am Dr. Ben Spears, the Emperor of Flow, and I'm here with the big guy as usual, Matt Vi. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Another day in paradise. We always talk about the weather, but we got such great weather here. It's hard not to talk about that. But super excited today on the podcast. I'm not giving anything away.
Yeah.
But we're going to be talking about sales, hiring, and retention. And I'm super excited for our guest, Alison, because I know she's going to help all of the listeners in the audience so much with what she does. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And before I bring Alison on, because you brought it up.
All right.
My mom, right? She lives in Kentucky. We always talk about my mom. Hi, Mom. My mom she was wearing short sleeves one day. She wakes up the next morning, they got 7 inches of snow, and she's got 2 trees across her driveway.
Yeah.
So I'm in Florida, Mom. Hope you're having a great time. Let's go ahead and bring on our guest. She is a body language expert. She is the founder of Moving Image Consulting. Alison Henderson. How are you doing, Alison?
Oh, I'm doing great. I live outside of Chicago, and I can absolutely relate to what your mom was going through, because we had the same thing. 6 degrees, then snow and 30. We're excited. It's supposed to get up into the 60s later again this week, but that's just what it is. We always say, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, it'll change.
Yeah, exactly. That's an old Florida saying. An old Florida saying as well. So Alison, you have a super interesting background. Matt and I, we always like to get an idea of like, okay, you're a body language expert. You have all these certifications, and to prove that you're the real deal. But I bet you didn't wake up, and you're like 6 years old, and you're thinking, you know what? I think I'm going to devote my life to the study of body language. Tell us a little bit about what happened that made you that made you go down that path. I know you were a director, a choreographer, and you're in theater. But let's talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I did come, as you say, to body language, to consulting through the theater portal, I guess, if you call it that. That's where my most of my training, or my master's degree, is in directing. And I was doing a lot of work with actors on movement and like full body acting, not just what we call talking heads, so that their character would be seen throughout the body. And I had a lot of movement training in that area. And as most of your listeners probably know, you don't necessarily make your living as a theater artist. You have to almost consider that a hobby and have a day job, at least when you're starting out. So when I was in my mid-20s or so, after I did my stint in New York City auditioning and everything, and everybody says, just give it 5 or 10 more years, you just need to grow into your voice. It's like, what does that mean, grow into your voice? But I'm not staying here waiting tables for another 10 years. That just seemed like when you're 22, that's like forever. Like, I'm going to be ancient and old and wrinkly by the time I leave if I wait 10 years. So I was back in Chicago, and I was working my day jobs, and I was noticing, because I was more of the assistant or the front desk sort of receptionist kind of worker, because I wanted to have my freedom to be out at 5 o'clock to go direct from 7 to 10 and then get up and do it all over again. I didn't want to necessarily be management. They would try to promote me and be like, what, I'm really fine right where I am. And I could really observe what was happening then, because I was sort of the note taker in the meeting, or I was the person that was just getting the coffee and stuff. And we would go into these conference rooms, and I'd be like, if I could capture the emotion and what is happening, the drama of this room on my stage, I'd really be onto something. And I would laugh with my actors at night. I would be like, you've got to come into my office, because these people are the real deal. And what I'm seeing from you is, I don't believe it. I don't believe your argument. And so then I started thinking, okay, maybe there's a way that I can help with this office dynamic. There's got to be a way that these two things, they're the yin and the yang of each other. There's got to be a way to work on this. And one of the certifications then that I went back to to school for at Columbia here in Chicago was called movement pattern analysis. And it is kind of like the graduate level course to all of the body language training that I'd already taken. And it really was geared towards business and consulting, because what movement pattern analysis does is it links your movement patterns that you repeat, and everybody has their own movement signature, I like to call it. It's very much like your thumbprint. Everybody has their own. This is how you recognize somebody walking down the street or in a crowded airport and you're waiting for them and you notice, you know who it is even before you can really see them, because there's something about their gait, there's something about the way that they move that you recognize. And these movement patterns connect to the thought process and the decision-making in the brain. So this is where it's really cool. I like to say it's like neuroscience meets body language, in that those decision-making processes in the brain, I can recognize those without having to ask you a series of questions. So it isn't like a psychometric test where, are you most like this? Are you least like this? Where you're filling in a lot of boxes and you're wondering, what does my boss think I'm more like this or less like this? Or how do they want me to answer this? I feel like a lot of those psychometric testing that's out there, everybody is trying to game the test. Well, you can't really game my test, because after about 10 or 15 minutes, you're going to show me your natural habits are going to start to come through and you start to relax. And that's why I'm so excited about movement pattern analysis, because I feel like it's a little bit more authentic. And that's where we can use that information to help individuals understand how they process through a decision, which might be different than somebody else in the office. Right. And this is where, for things like hiring, comes really into play, because we all know that like hires like, but you don't want to have a lot of mini-me's necessarily on your team or in your office. But if you know how you process decisions and you can recognize in somebody else, oh, that's just how they make their decisions, which is different than me. So I don't need to be offended by them, or I don't need to feel challenged by them. A lot of the friction can go away when you just understand how different people process. And so when I train clients, it's both understanding how you process, but how do you recognize how somebody else processes as well? And that's really where the magic happens. And it isn't necessarily instantaneous. Usually I'll get a call or an email maybe 2 or 3 months even after I've stopped working with somebody, and they'll go like, I really got it today. Like, I really saw it, or it really worked. And I was like, great, I told you, you will have this aha moment. Right now you're a little like overwhelmed, or you're a little like in trainer mode, right? It's learning another language. It literally is. You're not going to bring in a consultant for an hour and expect your team to understand Spanish and be able to go to Spain and converse with the office there. But body language is sort of similar. You have to take the time to process it and learn it, and then suddenly it'll click and you'll be like, now I got it.
Yeah.
So movement pattern analysis. So how closely does that tie to like personality? So when you're seeing people move and everything, is that saying, okay, this personality type has these types of movements? Is it like that? Or does it give off some other indicators that allow you to kind of connect the dots? Can you tell us a little bit about that, Alison?
Yes, there are 2 different sides that we look at. We look at your decision-making process, and then there's another thing that we look at that is actually how you interact with others, how you like best to make decisions. Some people are very group interactive oriented. They really need to be in that brainstorming process with other individuals, or they like to get everybody's opinion on the team. And there are some people that would really rather just, okay, I got your information. Now I'm going to go off and make my own decision about it. And they're like, now that we're done talking about it, I don't want your opinion. And yeah, I'm going to go do my own thing. And that, again, is where a lot of friction can happen, because that person that wants your opinion keeps sending you those emails. Hey, what do you think about this? Oh, I was thinking we should do this. And they're like, I put you in charge of this project. Please go do it versus asking me, or I should just do it, right? So sometimes what we call private interaction style individuals will then take over, like kind of take projects back, because like they don't want to deal with that. And they're like, fine, I could just do it faster myself. Or they don't delegate very well because they don't want to deal with that and they just do it themselves. So there's that side of it.
So
So
if
there's
you're not
that.
watching on YouTube,
I have to say something right
if you're
now.
not watching on YouTube,
If you're not watching this and if you're not watching this and you're listening to it, essentially what's happening is everything that she's saying of like, someone wants to, get other people's opinions and get feedback and, help make these, decisions. Like that's me, right? Matt points at me. And then that person who's like, I'm just going to take the project back. If you're not going to, put you in charge of it. And I'm just going to take the project back and that kind of thing, like that, and make that decision on my own, then that's Matt.
yeah, just keeping it.
It's great that you know that about each other, so that you can use that in your conversation. Be like, I know I've already asked you 5 times about XYZ, but just one more thing, right? Kind of, you can approach it in a certain way. That decision-making side of movement pattern analysis is really the 3 stages of decision-making that comes from psychology. So there's an attention, there's an information gathering stage of making a decision. There is an evaluation phase where we judge whether we should even do what it is that we're contemplating, part of that of the process. And then there is what we call in movement pattern analysis committing. There's that doing part of it. And different people like to process differently. We don't all gather information, then weigh judgment, and then do the project. Some of us leap right in and we say, yes, all right, I'll do that. Like the hands go up. Who would like to take over this? I'll do it. Do you know anything about it? Nope, I'll figure it out, because they would rather be doing. They would rather figure out by doing. I like to use the analogy of putting a bike together. The information gatherer will lay out all the pieces, read the instructions, make sure they have all the pieces before they even proceed with it. The judgment or the evaluator is still in the box. Should I have bought this bike? Maybe I should have bought the blue bike. I don't know if I like this purple color. Is this really better than the bike that I already have in the garage? Should I have sold that bike first? Do you think I'll be able to sell that bike on eBay? They can't even get started because they're still evaluating whether they should have made the purchase. And then there's the committer. They just dump it out and they start to go. Right. And they start putting it together. And then when they get stuck, they'll go to the directions. It's not like they don't have the resources or don't know how to get the resources. It's just that's not their go-to. They would rather start to put it together and then go back to the directions. And if there's 3 nuts and a bolt left over, well, those were probably just extra anyway. Right?
Yeah, right. Look at this unicycle I built.
Right.
Yeah. So there are different, different people have different, we kind of call which process is driving their train. Is driving their decision making. And once you understand that, particularly about yourself and then about others, that's when I keep alluding to that you can better facilitate as a manager, and you can hire kind of the missing link, perhaps even on the team, or you can decide, I don't necessarily want a fully balanced team because right now we need to drive, say, conversion rates or something. Mm-hmm. So I really need more doers that are going to make the calls, that are going to get out there and are going to do the work. So I want to put more of those people on my team. Or maybe you're in an information gathering stage where you are looking into new products and services or new software programs, maybe to bring into the office and to help your agents with what it is that they do, because there are so many things now. There's so many products out there that you can use that maybe you need to hire somebody that would be their jam. And they would be like, absolutely, I would love to go do that. And then they feel valued because they're doing something that they know is providing a lot of value for the team. And then they can share that information, and the group can make a decision about what it is that maybe they want to do, or the managers up the chain can make those decisions, but everybody then feels valued for what they're good at, because you as leader can recognize it and can assign accordingly, and everybody is a little bit happier and less stressed. And right now, stress
that makes so much sense.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I kind of have a question about all this, because I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, like Like I can, look at Matt, look at his body language and be like, he probably doesn't want tacos for lunch. Right. Whatever. I don't know. I'm not good at body language, but, if I'm reading someone, is there a way, and I don't mean this at all from a manipulation standpoint, right? I'm not coming at that from this point, but let's say I'm the broker, I'm the person who's interviewing, and I'm looking to hire someone, and I have an agent across the table from me, and they're like, man, like I really want this person to join my office. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to, I guess the question is, what could I do as a broker?
Yeah, how to build rapport.
To use body language, to build rapport, to let them know, like, gosh, like I really want you here, in a healthy, non-manipulative way. And because again, like that's just kind of where my brain went with some of this conversation. Okay, we're reading language, but how do we use it to speak as well?
Right. And that's a really great question, because we're not mics, we're not mute. So when I do work with clients, it's always that language piece with it.
Yeah.
And where we go wrong as individuals, or where things break down, is when our verbal communication isn't in sync with our nonverbal communication. Mm-hmm. Because that's when people go, something's a little weird. I don't know why. I don't know why I don't trust you, but for some reason I don't trust you anymore, because there's something weird going on. Because your words and your body language don't match. Because normally our nonverbal supports our verbal, because it's the subconscious. And if we're not trying to emulate or be somebody else, if we're not trying to put on some kind of an act, then it will generally match. So in this case, you want to watch that you don't go so far out of your habit that your verbal and nonverbal signals aren't going to match anymore. But one thing that trips a lot of people up is there's a lot of talk in both industries like insurance or real estate, or things about mirroring, and that you need to mirror the other person in order to establish this rapport, which means you need to move similarly to them. And I always say that happens naturally. If there is rapport, you're going to start to move in sync without you having to force it. Because as soon as you start to force it, that means that you're observing only, you're not listening anymore. You're observing and you're counting in your head like up to 3 seconds, and then you cross your arms because that person crossed their arms. Right. And then you're waiting another few seconds, and then they tuck their hair behind their ear. So then you're going to do the other side, but you're, it's like, that's sometimes how it's taught, right? You like count to 3 or count to 5, and then you do the same thing. And I'm like, that's when you get caught. At least that's how I catch people. When I notice they're doing it, like push my glasses up when I don't wear glasses, and see if they, if they do some kind of like, they touch their nose in a couple seconds. I'm like, oh, you're totally mirroring me now. Okay. Which feels manipulative then. If you get caught. So the way to not get caught doing that is to use in your language what you were observing from them. So if you are observing that, oh, I really want this person on my team because I can tell that they are information gatherers. Information gatherers tend to open and close a lot because they're sharing information with you, and then they're kind of gathering information from you. So there's usually a lot of horizontal movements coming at you from them. Mm-hmm. And if you're seeing a lot of that, then you can use that and say things like, one of the things that we're really looking for is somebody that values details and information and leaves no stone unturned. Right. We kind of need that on our team, because right now we're noticing some things are slipping through the cracks here and there because just the personalities on the team. We don't have somebody strong in that area. And I really feel like you might be the perfect person to fit that role. And if you were right in their information gathering, you'll see them kind of light up, because they're like, again, they're thinking, oh my gosh, I would totally love to do that. Yes, I would love to work here because I would love to do that. Right. And I know you've talked about on some of the podcasts, like taking prospective agents on a walk around the office, like don't skip that step. And I absolutely support you in that, because that's a chance to see more body language. Right. That's a chance to see head to toe as well. It's not because you don't have the desk in the way, or they're walking, and you can notice in their languaging what they value as well. If you are talking to somebody who tends to be more of the evaluator, you will probably hear comments that are more in kind of superlative language, like, oh, that's great. I love this setup that you have in your coffee station. I don't know what they would say, but they're usually, it's really, really good, or it's really, really bad. So then they might follow up with, oh, I was in this one office where, nobody kept anything clean, and there was like a roach problem. It was just really, really gross, right? So they remember the really, really good or the really, really bad, and they tend to talk kind of in those ways because they're judging and they're weighing the pros and cons, and they tend to think more in black and white. So if you need somebody on your team that can cut to the chase and be like, all right, we need to make this decision. Let's do it. Here's our pro list. Here's our con list. Where are we at? Then, that's your person. And so that's kind of why we train to know what your own proclivities are and where your own habits are, but also how to read somebody else, because then you can use it in your own language with them, because you can bring up things that most likely they're going to be receptive to.
Hey guys, this podcast is powered by Prospect Boomerang.
We all know broker owners struggle with profitability. Prospect Boomerang compounds your profits by recruiting the best agents to your brokerage.
For consistent growth, visit prospectboomerang.com.
That is absolutely so helpful. That is incredible. That's huge. I'm going to point something out that you said earlier, because we've talked through our audience. Marketing is in getting the word out the right way to people and making sure it connects with your audience, identifying the right audience and all that kind of stuff, is super important. And one of the things that Ben and I talk about a lot is awareness, consideration, and decision, right? That's the process that people kind of go through when they're deciding what company they want to work with. What you mentioned in kind of the process that people made, it was very similar. It was intention, information gathering, kind of that first step, and then evaluation, and then you said committee was the third step when they kind of made those decisions. So one, I thought that it was really cool that the two of those things kind of matched up, right? That messaging, both what was happening in advertising as well as what people were trying to do in their conversation with people, that there was some synchronization between the two of those. But I've got to ask you one other question here, and we want to be real respectful of your time, because we could talk all day about this. I just absolutely love this, right? So you mentioned that there was kind of different, some personality types. So you mentioned the information gatherer, right? You talked about people pulling the information in, and the evaluator, judging things and all that kind of stuff. What are some of the other kind of personalities that people have? And I know that this isn't just about personalities. I'm not trying to compartmentalize it that way. Please understand that. You've mentioned a couple of them, and I'm trying to get my head wrapped around this to make sure that I can talk about this when the time comes. And so, I'd love to hear a little bit more about, what some of those different types of people are and how they kind of match, and some of the gestures that they use in their conversation. Can you share a little bit of that with us?
The three types I usually call them the researcher, the judge, and the action hero, just because it makes it easier and it takes it out of pattern analysis language. And so people can remember that, because the researcher is that information person that we already talked about. They move more on the horizontal. So if you're listening, think about your pastor or something. When they're out there talking and they're all excited about their sermon, in general, they're opening and closing because they're sharing with everybody. Politicians the same way. When they're up there spouting, or they're at a town hall, they tend to open and close because they want to be giving away information. What I call the judge is that evaluator person, because sometimes you feel judged by the judgment person because they're asking a lot of why questions. Well, why do you do it like this? Or why can't we work from home? Or why this or why that? When they're asking a lot of why questions, sometimes you very easily become defensive. And it is good to know, if you don't particularly jive with those evaluators, to realize, okay, this is how they process. I shouldn't take offense to it, and I need to stop becoming defensive, because it's not really an attack on me. They just are seeking out that information very specifically. They tend to tip. So you could think of the scales of justice, that their shoulders tip. They also tend to gesture in sync, or what's the word I'm looking for? They tend to gesture with both arms in the same direction, or both hands in the same direction. They kind of go together as a group, rather than gesturing with one hand and the other hand is doing something different. The committers, those people that we call the action hero, because they're usually taking off. And the reason I also call them action heroes is because you think of the stereotypical flying Superman character or something, they're on the sagittal, because they move in the sagittal plane. They're the forwards and backwards people. So they will sit and they almost look like they're rocking, or they want to leap out of their chair at you because they're so excited. And the one caution that I will give about the heavy action hero types is because they tend to say yes very quickly, but then they also have buyer's remorse because they didn't do that information gathering. They didn't check everything, and they didn't necessarily go through an evaluative process. So for people that are very yes right away, I would encourage whoever's doing the hiring to basically say, well, I want you to take this packet, or I'm going to send you the information that we talked about. And after you've had a chance to review it, let's set up a time tomorrow to call and get your answer, kind of thing. Because they need the time to go back and realize they didn't do any of those other processes necessarily. They're just in there going, oh my gosh, I love this place. And I love you. You and I are like totally on the same page. I want to work here. But then after the fact, because they've gone and they've talked to their spouse who says, well, what's the compensation plan? What's your time off? What kind of health coverage do they offer? Blah, blah, blah. Then somebody's asking all these questions and they're like, I don't know. And so then they have buyer's remorse basically, and they feel like they want to turn around and quit on you but if you leave them the information, then they can go back on their own time and read it. And they also have it to share with that partner or to share with a colleague when they say, oh, I think I'm going to move over to this other agency. And then that colleague starts asking me again, a lot of questions that they don't have the answers to. So those heavy action heroes will be great once they're committed to you and they're in the office. They will jump right into whatever and they will get to work. But just from that hiring process, I would give them pause for a moment. You do that with all three types, because the information gatherers might want to review the information more specifically, and the evaluators then can take that information and write their little pro and con lists and things. So rather than necessarily putting it on the table right then, I don't know whether you talk about that, but sometimes I do counsel my clients to say, give them that day or two or whatever to really make their decision, even though they swear that they're ready and that they want to sign on the dotted line right now. You can even always blame your process. Well, our process is to leave you with the offer and then we talk in 2 days. Everybody does it the same. That's just what we do with everybody, rather than making it seem like we're doing something different for them.
Yeah, that's tough, Matt, because a lot of brokers are like, as soon as someone's like ready to sign on the dotted line, they're like, yes, here's the paper here. I'll hold your hand. We'll sign it together. Right.
They're afraid you're going to lose them.
Yeah.
In that time, because they're going to go somewhere else or they have another interview and you got to sign now. And that really isn't necessarily true, particularly if you're the one that's giving them the time and you say it, that way. We want to make sure that this is a really good fit for both of us. Yeah. So we give it this time. I'm going to think about it. Right now this looks absolutely fantastic, and and we want you here, but I want to make sure that put it that it fits you and your life and your family and whatever else. So go home and talk about it with your spouse. I don't want this just to be your decision alone, or think about the commute as you're driving home today. All of those things. Do you want that? And then that gives them more ownership over the process, and I think they tend to, because you gave them that grace, that puts you at a higher level maybe than whoever else.
Yeah, you just have to make sure that as you're hiring, that you treat it not as an event, but as a process. That's why there's in recruiting, there's 4 different pieces to it, and onboarding is one of those pieces. You know, we talk a lot to our clients about making sure that, you know, the onboarding is the delivery of what was promised through the rest of it. So making sure they take all those appropriate steps is going to make all the difference in the world. And that way they're not rushing out. That way they're not rushing into it.
Yeah. And Alison, before I get to the part of the podcast where I say, how does everybody get in touch with you? I have one thing that's just, it's eating away at me, right? Let's say you and I are, you know, right now we're on a Zoom, we're talking, that kind of thing. Let's say you and I are on a phone call and you can't see me. It's got to just like eat away at your soul, right? Like, you got to be thinking
I do enjoy Zoom, I have to say.
Zoom was probably like your favorite invention ever.
I mean, it totally made me pivot my business. Let me tell you, when everything shut down in March of 2020, it was like, oh my gosh, because I did everything in person, right? So, how do you see things through this box? And so, going virtual was something, you know, that I think now people are getting used to Zoom. So maybe you could do your initial, you know, consults on Zoom. But if you are on the phone, you can listen for the wording of how they answer your questions, for one. The information gatherer is probably going to ask a lot of what questions. They're going to want information. So they're going to ask for that kind of general information about your firm, and you know, it kind of depends. Some people are more detail oriented than others, but they're probably going to be asking a lot of those kind of general questions. Yeah. That judge person, as I said before, might ask a lot of why questions, or will want you to put things in black and white for them. They may even say, okay, so let's put this into the nitty gritty here. Like, you know, what this person is, right? They're going to probably ask, you know, they're going to want you to be really specific on those kinds of things. The commitment or the action hero type of person is a little bit more how oriented. They might want to know the processes that you have in place. They're going to want to know about the software that's going to make their job easier and let them get face-to-face with clients and help with that interface with the clients, because they want to be out there doing kind of those kind of things. So you could listen for that. I would say if you're the one that's on the phone, I would encourage you to stand up while you're talking to them, because you'll have more energy through your own voice. That's why I'm standing today, even to make sure that I have more energy in my voice and that it's coming across deep and round and rich for the podcast. So the standing up, you will tend to sound better and more managerial, if that makes any sense. You'll sound more like the boss if you are standing up. Yeah. So I would encourage them to stand up, but really, you know, listen for those energy drops in the other person. You can get some of that over the phone. For sure. Wouldn't be so worried about pauses, because that means that they're thinking, or they're registering, they're taking things in. That's where we get really nervous, of course, on the phone, is when there's silence.
Yeah, and then that would make sense to just take some notes of what you think as you're going through the conversation, and not to compartmentalize all of the rest of your conversations going forward with them, but absolutely just to kind of make some notes when you're having that phone conversation. And that way, whenever you get face to face, you're seeing if there's a synchronization between what they talked about on the phone and what it is that they're actually saying face to face. Because if you can identify that, there's clearly a pattern in that, right? And if there's a pattern in that, makes it very easy for you to understand how they would fit into your how they would fit into your team. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And what I usually tell individuals to do too is, right after the interview, do that. Take notes on what you saw, what stuck out body language wise, because that will help you figure out maybe what type of decision maker or how they fit into your team. And as the manager, you also want to do that for your entire team, so that and want to observe the whole team, or do a team workshop where they all get to learn it. And then you have kind of notes, and you know where the deficits might be, or who might work best with whom, or who might work even best with certain types of of clients, because it would be great if the agents themselves would share, like if they realize that this is not the right fit person for me, I know that I'm not going to do well with this person because of XYZ and their personality.
Yeah.
But Sue over here works
Yeah.
great with this type of person. And so I'm going to recommend that they go talk over here, rather than getting that 3 months or 6 months down the line and then having an unhappy client who just drops you. You can give them to somebody where they'll be successful.
Yeah, for sure. I can easily say this is one of my favorite podcasts, at least one of the most informative. I feel like I've learned so much. I've taken more notes on this podcast than I think I've ever taken before. And that's just a testament, Alison, to everything, all of your knowledge and what you're bringing, and we're so grateful that you're willing to share it with our listeners.
Yeah.
I want to return that favor by asking you, so that all of our listeners can get connected with you. What is the best way? And I have a few things that I'll mention after this. What is the best way for a listener to connect with you, reach out, maybe ask a question, if you're cool with that? Can you share that information?
Well, one of the best ways is simply to go to the website, movingimageconsulting.com. So it's all 3 words, no spaces, no nothing in between. And there is a go ahead and sign up for a free chat, like consult. You can just, connect with me. I would definitely say, I think there's a thing in there like, how did you hear about us or something, mention the podcast so that I know kind of like what you heard or what you saw. That would be great. LinkedIn is a wonderful place to find me and ask questions too, because you can, of course, private messaging. I still am working on, because people say that I need to have the business page. It's still just under me, Alison Henderson. I haven't gone to that whole double up page thing, but and I have a newsletter on LinkedIn. I go LinkedIn Live once a week. So if you are on LinkedIn, that's a really great way to find me as well. The YouTube channel, which is just under Moving Image, you can find me on YouTube, and there's so many free tips on there as well. You can get lost for a couple of hours just watch me give you another tip on something.
We love that.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. So guys, I will put links in the description below to everything that she just mentioned. So make sure you go, you connect with her, you follow her, make sure you subscribe to her YouTube channel. Alison, I'm getting ready to wrap this up and put a bow on it, but I want to say thank you one more time, for coming on. We're so grateful that you're willing to share all of that with us.
So, thanks so much for having me. This has been really a fun chat.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. We can't tell you how much we appreciate, and we know it's just going to help the audience so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, wherever you're listening to this, whether it be iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Deezer, any of those platforms, make sure you hit that follow button. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that red subscribe button and that bell right beside of it. You get notified every time we drop a new episode. And there's no better time than the present than to go to prospectboomerang.com and see all the cool things that Matt and I have to help you grow your brokerage, no matter what phase or stage of the business that you're in. Matt, we bring on amazing guests just like Alison, and we're so grateful that they can want to share their information. That we know that they want to do the same thing that we want to do.
Yep.
Right. And what is that one thing that we want to do, man?
We just want to be part of their win.